You know, when you have a show about gratitude, you've got to be grateful for your sponsors. And in our life of gratitude, you know, we all have guides. Somebody that guided us through our lives, that made us appreciate those things that we have. And that's why I'm so delighted and so grateful for our sponsor, Life Guides. Life Guides is a peer-to-peer community that helps people navigate through their day-to-day stressors by providing a place of empathy, listening, wisdom, and support with a guide who has walked in your shoes, experiencing the same challenge or life experience as you. A true life guide. And because you're listening to our gratitude podcast, if you go to their website, lifeguides.com/schedule a demo and add the code HEALTHY2021. The code is HEALTHY2021 in the free text box. You'll get 2 months of their services for free. 2 months for free. So sign up, show your team you care, get a life guide, be grateful for those guides in your life, as I am grateful for our sponsor, Life Guides. Hey, welcome to Living with Gratitude Live. I'm your host, Chester Elton, the apostle of appreciation, coming to you from the gratitude viral epicenter of the universe, Summit, New Jersey. You know, we're broadcasting on LinkedIn Live and Facebook and YouTube. We're also running on Marshall Goldsmith's channel, which is great fun. So we're reaching just under 2 million potential followers. Well, you know, it's all brought to you by the wonderful people at the Methods Network. And if you're looking for a great production value for your conference or for your, you know, LinkedIn Live or live shows, you know, get a hold of the guys at Methods. They're wonderful. Well, listen, I want to introduce you to you today, my new friend. Nick Bradley is just one of those guys you want to spend time with. Let me give you a little bit about his resume so that you'll get to know him as we jump into our conversation today. Nick Bradley is an entrepreneur and author. He's a speaker and investor. His background is in growing and scaling VC and private equity-backed businesses. Having successfully built and bought and sold a number of companies, he's removed himself from the day-to-day operations, and his focus now is on helping entrepreneurs get where they want to be in business and in life. Nick is very passionate about his personal and professional development, showing up and being the best version of himself every day, and you will see that today. His bigger vision, though, is to help bring entrepreneurial skills and expertise and that mindset into developing nations. We're going to talk about that a little bit, so that they can follow their dreams, live a life more on their terms, using entrepreneurship as a global force for good. So let's welcome to the show, Nick Bradley. He's a delightful Aussie living in the UK. You can take an Aussie anywhere, and they're delightful. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Wow. I mean, Chester, what an introduction. You know, and I've even worn some orange for you today. I had to.
I love it. I love it. Hey, you know, as the conversation goes on, we're going to take a lot of questions. So put your questions in the chat box. And Christy, who's in our question command center in Atlanta, Georgia, wait for the crowd, love the glasses. She will put your questions in the box, and we will have a good time with that as well. So, Nick, entrepreneur, you know, you're doing all this great stuff. What made you so passionate about not just building businesses, but the impact those businesses have on the entrepreneurs and their communities?
Yeah, I mean, I started off as an entrepreneur at a very young age, Chester. I mean, I started my first business as an 18-year-old, and it wasn't a lemonade stand. It was a personal training business back in the sort of late 80s, early 90s in Adelaide, South Australia. And I kind of, you know, back then, when you're young, you kind of do things, you don't think about it too much. I kind of thought I was bulletproof, and I kind of just started this business. It was pretty successful early on, and then I sold it. And then I kind of went into the world of corporate. But I've always had this sort of, you know, streak in me, which is that entrepreneurship has the ability to change lives, to change communities, geographies, change the world. And I've always sort of been involved in that area, you know, be that as an investor, be that as, you know, someone who's advised businesses on growth and scale up. And for me, I think now more than ever, particularly with everything that's been going on in the world, there's so many different challenges and so many different things that entrepreneurship can solve. My mission, my purpose is to scale, as you said, the thinking, the mindset, the aptitude, more globally to people who can't get access to this stuff, because I think it's going to make a big difference now and in the future.
Yeah. And, it really is. You've gone international as well. I know you're helping people in third world countries and developing countries. And it's interesting because we get people from all over the world on our broadcast here. We've got Khalid from Abu Dhabi, Elizabeth from Maryland, from North Carolina, Anna Dini. I hope I said that right. Marion from the UK, folks from Canada, and so on. Welcome to the show. Talk to me about the work that you're doing in the developing countries and why that's so passionate about. You're so passionate about that.
Yeah, happy to. I think what we've done is we predominantly kind of work with businesses that are, they have the potential to be great, right? But they're stuck. And what I do with that, is go in there and kind of help them be able to be more successful, to make a greater impact, both financially and kind of more socially. And so what I'm finding through that is that as we help founders, CEOs of these businesses, business leaders understand the context between being both financially successful, but also having, more of a conscious capitalism viewpoint, it's allowed us to start to work more globally, as you were just suggesting. So my view at the moment and what we're doing is working more in developing countries and trying to open up opportunities around mentorship and coaching to people who are, let's say they haven't had the education, they haven't had the privilege, if you like, of university education and things like that, but they have a streak of entrepreneurship. They can see problems and they want to have a vehicle for putting solutions into the world. And what we're trying to do is bring together entrepreneurs who have had success and getting them to mentor people in third world countries, in developing countries, as a kind of a give back. Because I think the more that people make a contribution just in life, the more they feel complete, the more they feel fulfilled. And so we're starting to open up those avenues as part of our work.
That's so cool. I love sort of your mantra. And we read this last night as we did our teaser show, but I think it bears repeating. It says, I'm a big believer that you're always growing, always learning. That's what life is about. My whole ambition is to build an empire and create more impact. And I'd like to be able to help other people do that as well. As we talked about, sometimes empire has a negative connotation, and yet building an empire for good, not the Death Star kind of empire, the empire for good. I mean, who wouldn't want that? To your point, you raise up the level of education and the ability for people to educate their kids, and that's the tide that raises all ships. That's really what you're trying to get to, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I thought about this long and hard, right? I thought, and you've called it out, the word empire can sometimes mean different things. It can mean, Genghis Khan, taking over, the tribe next door in a different country. It can be, the person in a business who empire builds. And we talked about this briefly last night, then tries to suck up all the resources. Usually the definition being that it's, for their own self-interest. But I don't think that, right? I think that scale, right, is such a driver of both impacts and importance and different things in the world. And I just like the terminology of empire, because I think empire means scale. It means making a greater impact. And what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to, it's almost like a rally cry. I get a bit passionate about this, is businesses that are creating really transformational scale in the world. And something we can talk about. You've got the Amazons, you've got the Facebooks, the Googles, but it's not just them. I think if there was more collective consciousness around what they could be doing, then more of the problems that exist in the world could be solved. And as we briefly touched on last night, it's not just governments who necessarily have to do that, in my opinion. I think entrepreneurship and the empires of this world, the business empires, have a role to play in that.
Yeah. So, obviously, our whole mission is to bring gratitude into leadership and into business. You've got to have some stories about, as you've helped entrepreneurs in various places. I mean, their expressions of gratitude for your guidance and your help must be really affirming. Is there a particular business that you helped grow and develop, or a particular entrepreneur that you helped that comes to mind that really gave you that sense of satisfaction when they came back to you and said, Nick, couldn't have done it without you?
Well, I'll tell you a very brief story of something that happened quite recently, and I get a bit emotional about this, right? Because it was such an interesting thing that happened, right? So quite often when you go into a business, there are 6 areas of a business that are normally not optimized, not working. And I take that from a decade of working in private equity and sitting at one side of the table and looking at businesses and saying, you know what, you have the potential to be a great business. A great business meaning, sustainable, profitable, making an impact, making a difference. But you're stuck. You're not a broken business. You're still a good business. You're solving a problem, but you're stuck. And quite often those lenses, the 6 areas is where people fall down. So there's a guy, I won't say his name. He'd probably like it if I said his name, but I won't say it, who at the beginning of COVID runs an online retail business. Reasonable size, not massive, but reasonable size, young guy, really passionate about what he does. And he just absolutely went into hibernation at the beginning. And the business was, therefore performing not very well. He couldn't see anything out of it. And I spent 1 hour with the guy. And it ended up being a conversation around purpose, vision, and mission. Delving into mindset. And he was like, at the end of it, he was kind of crying and he was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I kind of thought, well, listen, I can't do any more now. I've taken you somewhere and I knew I'd taken him there because we'd broken through any limiting beliefs he had. Anyway, so long story short, he went away and he gave himself a week. And in that week, he went away and he kind of raised himself up 50,000 feet. And he kind of looked at the world in a different way. Fast forward now 3 months, he's tripled the size of his business. He launched 3 new products, which were very focused on health. So it works in the kind of online retail, but in the kind of rainwear and outdoor sort of clothing space. He created these amazing masks, COVID masks for cyclists and for outdoor adventurers and things like that. Did the whole thing within 6 weeks. And he's literally, as I said, tripled the size of his business from a place where I actually thought he could have even gone the other way. So it's just a small story, but you know what? It's the power of a conversation. It's the power of getting people to rise up and see something differently. And then, seeing that what can be unleashed from that.
And the power that somebody believed in him, right? That you would take the time to say, hey, you've got huge potential here. Well, you mentioned COVID and how that was kind of, when he went into hibernation. We've got some COVID questions for you in our question command center in Atlanta, Georgia. So let's shoot it over to Christy. Yeah, come on, Christy, come on over.
Well, hey there, Nick. We have a question from Sal in Florida, and he wants to know, what is the one thing that you've had to recalibrate in your business to upscale during these times of COVID?
Okay, so I touched on a little bit about this, but, it's funny, right? I work with businesses all over the world. And the one thing that always comes back is, as I said before with that story, is the ability to kind of step up, right? Step out of the situation. Now, I'm going to answer this in a little bit more direct way. A lot of people, when they're going through challenge and going through change, particularly if their cash flow, for example, is tiny, or they maybe have a runway of cash in their business, which is 4 weeks, 6 weeks, which is quite common with a lot of businesses over this period. They have the inability to be able to step up more strategically and start to think about the business in a different way. Now, I'm not going to use the word pivot because it's overused, right? But in terms of collaboration, one is, first and foremost, the leader has to be able to rise up and see opportunities that are out there in the market, which are externally focused. They have to be customer centric. They have to be market centric. So that's the first thing. Then they have to be able to be curious enough to be able to experiment with what's going on. So what I mean by that is, you might have an events business, and that events business, relies on the fact that people used to get together. They can't do that anymore, right? But that events business might still have a problem that it's solving, which is around something like employee engagement. That problem hasn't gone away, but the way of servicing that problem has changed. So for me, the first part of that, as I said, is stepping up, looking at the bigger picture, and then looking at your products and your marketing to see how you can focus that differently to still solve a problem, because the problem invariably still exists.
Excellent. We got another question. By the way, I think that was Sal from Florida. That was his question. But Christy, you've got another one.
Yes. We have a question from Indonesia. Suryo wants to know, what is the difference in business growth and growth analyst, and what is the significant impact for enterprise?
Wow. So the difference between business growth and business growth analysts. Is that right, Christy? Just I want to make sure I've got that 100% correct.
Business growth and growth analyst.
Okay, so listen, I'll try and answer this in a very non-technical way, because being Australian, we're quite direct on these things. My view, right? My view on life is this: you need to simplify your planning if you want to grow and scale. So I'm going to start there, and then I'm going to kind of get into the analytics side of things to bring that. So more often than not, I'll come into a business and I'll start working strategically, and I'll see a plan, which is the most complex thing I've ever seen, over 45 pages of a PowerPoint presentation. And I normally say, get it down to 5. Now, the reason for that is if you haven't got clarity, there's no way that you're going to be able to deliver your plan. Now, if I answer this correctly, every business, for it to go from good to great, needs to be underpinned by data, metrics, and analysis. And so I've got 7 businesses currently, and I don't run the day-to-day really in any of them, but I have metrics through those businesses which allow me to be free from the day-to-day. And by that, I mean, I can look at dashboards. I know exactly what the drivers are. But you know what? It's kind of like the two things are hand in hand. Like growth comes, or freedom to drive growth comes from data. So for me, my personal view is you can't really have intentional growth without having really strong analytics and sort of the analysis of it. And to your last point, just to finish it around enterprise, all great businesses, every single one I work with, has really, really strong analytics that underpin decision-making, externally focused, market-driven. So those things, as far as I'm concerned, are interchangeable.
Excellent. So talk to me about, you started with your training business when you were 18. Was there a business that you developed and sold or helped grow that really taught you those principles, that was kind of your biggest education that really brought you into the entrepreneurial space, where now you've dealt with 20 plus companies?
The biggest,
was there one company that taught you that lesson? Yeah.
Well, you know what, hindsight, it's one of those hindsight things. I learned when I had that first business when I was 18, and as I said, I thought I was unstoppable. I learned about customer-centric approach to everything. So everything, and that sounds, again, there's a lot of businesses that I get involved in now, they forget the customer. And the world is changing so quickly that a problem that your business may have solved even 18 months ago or 12 months ago may no longer be a problem. And a lot of people kind of get too insular. So I learned that in my first personal training business, because that business, even though it was small, was all about relationships. It was all about rapport. It was all about kind of connection. So that was the first piece. When you get into the bigger things, the sort of 20-odd businesses that I've been involved in, which have been sold literally into the billions combined, that's come from a private equity, sitting on the side of a table, being sent into businesses to do turnarounds, and then just getting a heap of information, insight, data, experience of seeing what works and what doesn't. So you could argue it's a decade of live experimentation. And so from that's where this kind of lenses I look into businesses, come from. And very quickly, purpose is the most important thing. Lots of founders these days have lost direction. They start the business for one reason, but when they go into scale up, they forget exactly what they're trying to achieve. So it sounds simplistic, but it's very, very important. Then you've got profitability, managing cash effectively. You've got proposition. So in other words, do we have something here that really solves a problem, which we spoke about previously? Then you've got predictability of revenue, which is, again, making sure you've got intention around your commercial activity. Then it's process, which comes a bit into what we talked about with data and metrics. And then the last one, arguably the most important one, certainly up there with purpose, is people. High caliber people, just demonstrating values and behaviors that are driven from an intentional culture.
Excellent. Well, people and culture, that's where we live, right? That's what I've been writing about for 20 years. You said, customer-focused businesses. What would you say to people say, well, yeah, I understand that, although I think it's important to be a really employee-focused first. You talk about the entrepreneur needs to remember his or her purpose. How important is it, like those good people, that everybody on your team gets that purpose, and you start with the employees before you get to the customer, or is it the customer and then the employees?
Do you know, I often say, as a CEO of some of these PE-backed businesses, as it's often said, it's the loneliest job in the world. And I think that's to some extent true, certainly in management. But the other thing is, I used to always say this. I used to say, I actually have two customers, right? I have the customers who buy my products and services, and I have the customers that live within my organization as employees. And my job as the leader is to serve both of those communities. So I don't like to say which is more important. And I think, you can debate backwards and forwards. What I say is this: if you lose track of the external customer, in other words, you can't, you don't solve a problem that exists anymore, you're not relevant, then your business is going to die, right? Unless you change it. And if you don't look after your employees, if you don't honestly care about them and give up time for them, then you know what's going to happen? They're not going to, particularly now because things have changed massively with how people think about it, they're not going to want to, rip up trees for you. They're not going to want to, take that hard march for you. They're not going to buy in. So for me, you have to look at both. I think they're equally important.
Excellent. We've got a couple more questions at the command center, and then I want to get to your 4 pillars that I think are beyond brilliant. But Christy, a couple of more questions. What are they?
Yes. So Kevin is in California, and he wants to know, what digital subscription models are you most confident in? Do you have advice for print subscription companies going digital?
So yeah, cut out a fraction there. Was that advice on print companies going digital? Was that right, Christy?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so this is interesting. So a slight segue. I spent 15 years in media. I worked for a while with News International and then Getty Images, and I even did a stint at Boston Consulting Group doing the transition from print media to digital media. So it's almost like a stage question. What? I know it's not. I'm just mucking around. But okay. So here's the thing, right? Anything that's I call analog that needs to move to digital, you have to understand what really is the importance between those things, because old business models that are sort of, certainly from the print to digital piece, what we did when I did the transition in the sort of magazine days is we said, what's really here? Well, what it was brand, it was community, and then it was providing inspiration, education, and sometimes actually products and services to allow people within that community to enjoy their passion. So my principle these days is the same. My answer is the same to this: is that just because you've got a legacy business which may be kind of analog in its business model, you still are going to have a brand, particularly if it's a business that's been going for some time, and you're going to have a community or a set of customers that kind of love what you do. The opportunity is to be able to understand the problem that still needs to be solved and be able to solve that through digital means. And the other thing I often advise people to do is, because, we're talking in different parts of the world, technology has evolved so much, even from when I was working in that space, is have a look at your market from more of a global perspective, as opposed to something which may have been constrained previously because of the physicality of your products and services. So it's an interesting play. When I was at Getty Images, we transformed what was stock photography to being fully online. And what used to happen is people used to send out these kind of packs of photos, literally these kind of massive books of photos, and people would choose what they wanted for media campaigns and advertising campaigns. And we just put all of that same content online so it could be accessed 24/7 anywhere in the world. And that business, I think it was sold 4 or 5 times, well into the billions in the end.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. When you're digital, you can go global in a heartbeat, right? As opposed to having to mail stuff out. Interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, so I want to get to your 4 pillars. You say, look, and this is great takeaway, by the way. If you've got a pen, write this down or put it in your phone. The 4 keys, he says, is to be grateful, be brave, have faith, and show up. And you say, a day doesn't go by that you don't say that to somebody. That you got to be grateful, be brave, have faith, and show up. Walk us through those and why those are so key to really exploding your business.
Yeah, I mean, it's an affirmation for me, Chester. It's almost my personal mantra, because I'll take you through each of them quickly, because I think each of them have a purpose, and then they obviously work in unison as well. We don't need to talk too much about gratitude, do we? That's the show. No.
Well, listen, buy the book. Just buy the book. Yeah,
buy the book. No, what I said to you though was this, and this is what I believe, is that most people don't do things in life because of fear, and fear, depending on your perspective of that, is not really real. I mean, it doesn't mean we don't get scared. The human being, that's a trait which protects us. But fear is one of the things that I think holds a lot of people back. And for me, being courageous has been something that's been a lifelong mission, to kind of always be as brave as I can. But gratitude is the antidote of fear. So the more grateful and present you can be every single day for what you've got, the more aptitude that you have, my opinion, to be able to take on bigger things. So if you're stuck in fear mode because you're not grateful for what you have right now, it's very, very hard to make the next step to do something amazing. And then, being brave is the ability to take the step. We all feel fear. The difference between people who are really successful in business and in life is they take the step. They feel the fear, they do it anyway. And so being brave is about, for me, just doing it, where you're making that happen. But you've got to be able to face that, because we're all going to feel the same things. Having faith is an interesting one, because I put that down as trust. And sometimes people don't trust themselves enough. They don't trust their instincts. They don't trust their intuition. They don't trust their guts. And so sometimes people contextualize having faith as being a greater purpose. It could be a God. It could be whatever else. I think of it more in terms of, you've made the decision. You're courageous enough to do it. Trust that it's going to happen. Trust that it's going to work. Trust yourself. Have that confidence. And then the last one, which is, is all about taking action. A lot of people in life don't show up enough. They hide in the corners. And again, it comes back to fear. And more often than not, the people who are the most successful are the ones who commit to something. They stay disciplined. They keep doing it. They may not see the result straight away, but they keep at it. They show up every single day. And you know what? My view is that success in business and life is inevitable if you show up every day. So that's why those 4 pillars, those 4 principles are so important, and they've certainly shaped my life now and will do in the future.
Yeah, I love it. Be grateful, be brave, have faith, show up. So where can people find more about your work? And tell us a little bit about your podcast. It's the #1 podcast in the UK. You're a podcast phenomenon. So where do we find your podcast?
I'm grateful for that. Thank you, Chester. So Scale Up Your Business is my podcast. People can find that on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and now Amazon Music. We've just gone live on that as well. The thing about that, right, is it's business. It's the mechanics of business. It's the blueprint of how you go from a business that's not performing to one that's extraordinary. So it's all those things you would expect it to be. But you know what? It's a lot about mindset. It's a lot about belief systems. It's a lot about the mantra we just went through. And the people that have really gravitated to that and have joined our community on Facebook, the Scale Up Your Business community, are people who understand that it's not just about the business, it's about the identity of the leader that's going to transform, the projection of the company. And that's where my whole mission, if you like, has been different. So yeah, have a listen to that. People can reach out to me on LinkedIn, which is great. So I was going to say, if anyone's here listening and they want to link into me, come and link in straight after the show. We've also got the 6 peaks that I was talking about before. If people have a business and they want to get that assessed, then they can take an assessment. We have a free assessment for people, so they can start to do that if they want to go deeper into some of this stuff as well.
Excellent. So what do you want your work to be remembered for? Let's project 30 years from now. People say, "Oh, Nick Bradley, what do you want them to say?"
I had this really weird thing I did, weird for me, but it's not weird when I say it, but when people go, "What?" So 6 years ago, I wrote down a 20-year vision, right? Wow. And one of the things I wrote down was to buy a Boston Celtics. Now, I love basketball and they didn't do very well last night. But the reason I wrote down buy the Boston Celtics I know, I'm a little bit upset. I kind of was hoping to come on the show and be able to say, whatever. But, it's not about the Boston Celtics. It's about the ability to write a check, right, to do that. Because my view is this, how much good must I have created in the world? How many lives must I have changed in the world to be able to write that check? Now, as I said, I wrote that 6 years ago, and it's still something that makes me think the ability, the identity of me then, what is that like? But the bigger piece that sits underneath that, because it's a bit different, I get it, is back to what we said, entrepreneurship has the ability to change people's lives. It has the ability to change economies. It can drive progression. It can drive prosperity. It's a force for good. And I want to be known as, someone who has absolutely helped people deliver freedom in their, freedom from the businesses, the ability for them to be able to do more in their lives, to live life on their terms, and to provide entrepreneurship as a vehicle for people to be able to make a greater impact. So if people say Nick Bradley did that, and he bought the Celtics, but if he did that, then you know what? That would be a pretty amazing life, right? I'd be pretty happy with that as a legacy.
Well, that's excellent. Listen, it's always a delight to talk to you, and delighted to have you on the show and share you with all our viewers and listeners. Your energy is contagious. Your mission is wonderful. Of course, we ask every guest, what are you grateful for today? Where did you find your gratitude?
Oh, man. I always try and be creative here, Chester, because I have a gratitude journal. I every morning and every night, I write down the 3 things that I'm grateful for. But what always comes up? Every single day, it's my family. It's my amazing wife, Carrie, my 2 little girls, Arabella and Matilda. They're my why. And I catch myself every single day when I kind of go off on one, which is usually trying to think of bigger things to do and bigger things to achieve and, empires and all that. The thing that catches me every single day is just looking at how they are growing, how they're developing, how they're experiencing life. So that's my gratitude today, and it's my gratitude every day.
Excellent. Well, listen, we're going to wrap up the show. Stick around so we can chat a little bit afterwards. That's always fun. But listen, wave goodbye to everybody. Thank you, Nick. You're always amazing. Go to his website. Awesome. Be brave, have faith, show up, and be grateful. Hey, listen, we love having you on our show and tuning in. Grateful for your presence. We got a little commercial from our sponsor, our wonderful Harper Business Books. Ellen Mullally said of our book, I love this book. And then a little call to action. Buy me, buy me, buy me. Available on Amazon. Hey, listen, I want to say thank you to Christy and in Atlanta, Georgia, who always does a great job. Love the classes. The world's greatest online producer, Brent Klein in Austin, Texas. If you want a production this great, get a hold of Brent at the Methods Network. Hey, listen, be grateful, be kind, be brave, show up. Find your gratitude today and perform a random act of kindness. It'll make you feel better and it'll make them feel better. Grateful for your time, everybody. See you next Thursday at 1 o'clock. Same bad time, same bad channel. Cheers.